The piano was still playing when she froze at the sight of him. He stepped through the swinging doors of the saloon like a ghost returning from the past, broad shoulders framed by dust and daylight, his hand resting easy on the belt where his colt used to ride. The laughter and clink of glasses didn't stop, not at first, but her own breath did. She hadn't seen him in 10 years, not since the night she'd laughed at his foolish talk of dreams, calling him nothing more than a drifter who'd die with dirt in his pockets. Now he was here, older, confident, a silver band glinting on his finger, and beside him, like a vision out of a different life, walked the woman she'd once sworn he could never win, his wife. The barmaid's tray shook in her hands. She turned quick, pouring whiskey into glasses for men who barely noticed her, praying none of them saw the tremor. She had learned, over these bitter years, to lower her eyes and hold her tongue, but tonight, her own words echoed back like ghosts. "You'll never own more than the boots on your feet, Caleb Mercer." Yet here he was, Caleb Mercer, the man who used to dream out loud beneath desert stars, now stepping across the polished floorboards of her saloon. Except it wasn't hers, not anymore. Caleb's gaze swept the room, taking in the tables, the card players, the bar lined with bottles. It lingered only a heartbeat on her, a flicker of recognition. No smile, no bitterness either, just something unreadable, like a man choosing what parts of his past were worth remembering. Then he guided his wife toward the dance floor, nodding to the piano man. Music swelled. Couples parted to give them space. She stood rooted, a bottle of rye sweating in her hand, and watched him pull his wife close. Watched her laugh as though this dusty town belonged to them now. The saloon roared louder, but for her, it was silence. Just Caleb's boots sliding. Across her floorboards, just the tilt of his head as he spun his bride beneath the lamplight. Her throat burned. She poured another glass, steadying herself with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then came the sound she'd been dreading for years. Boots on the porch, heavy and deliberate. Not Caleb's, not any stranger's either. She knew that walk, and if he stepped inside tonight, secrets long buried would claw their way back into the open. The boots stopped just outside. A shadow spilled across the doorway, long and sharp under the lantern light. The piano faltered, then carried on as though nothing had changed, but every man at the tables stiffened. The laughter thinned to silence. She set the bottle down carefully, her palms slick. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Jeb Rourke, the man who'd once held the deed to this saloon, the man she'd hitched her wagon to after mocking Caleb's dreams. Jeb, who drank away fortunes and fought away friends until the place slid into Caleb's reach like a coin into the dirt. And if Caleb Mercer now danced with his bride in the center of the floor, it meant one thing clear as daylight. Jeb had finally lost it all. He pushed through the doors with a snarl of wood and iron, his hat tipped yew, his beard streaked gray. His eyes found her first, always her first, and for a flicker of a second, she was 20 again, full of fire and foolishness, believing Jeb's promise that he'd put the world at her feet. But all he'd left her was debts and a name cursed by half the county. "Pour me a drink," Jeb growled. His voice was raw, as though he'd swallowed gravel all the way from the desert. She reached for a glass out of habit, but her eyes slid to the dance floor. Caleb had stopped moving, hands still resting at his wife's waist. His gaze was on Jeb now, hard as iron, steady as a stake in the ground. Jeb noticed. He always noticed. "Oh well," he said louder, his words slurring into a grin. "Look who's come back from the dust heap. Little Caleb Mercer thinking he's king of the saloon now. Ain't that something?" The room tightened, every man waiting to see where the fire would spark. Her heart hammered. She had two choices. Side with the man who once ruined her life, but still held her secrets, or with Caleb, the man she had scorned, yet who now owned everything Jeb had promised her. If she poured that drink, she was standing with Jeb. If she didn't, her hand hovered over the bottle. "I said pour." Jeb's words cut sharp. She swallowed, eyes darting to Caleb's wife, who watched with quiet confusion, unaware of the bloodlines of history twisting in the smoke. And then outside came the unmistakable thunder of more hooves. Riders, several of them, closing in fast. The saloon windows rattled in their panes. The past wasn't the only thing coming tonight. "Keep playing," Caleb said evenly to the piano man. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried like a command. Jeb snorted, leaning heavy against the bar. "Look at you, giving orders in my house." But the saloon wasn't his anymore. That much even the drunkest cowhand could see. The boots outside drew closer, the stomp of hooves in rhythm, like a drumbeat of war. The air thickened with smoke from cigars no one smoked anymore, everyone holding their breath. The barmaid, her knuckles still white around the whiskey bottle, felt the weight of both men's eyes. Jeb's, full of bitter hunger, and Caleb's, calm but ready, a steel she hadn't known he possessed all those years ago when she'd mocked him for dreaming. The doors burst open again. This time, it wasn't Jeb. 4 riders stormed in, dust trailing like storm clouds. Their coats were long, faces shadowed, revolvers hanging loose at their sides. One kicked the door wider, another spat into the sawdust. "Rourke," the tallest one said, his voice like gravel dragged through iron. "Debt's due, and I reckon tonight we collect." Jeb stiffened, the whiskey glass half raised but shaking. "Hi." His grin vanished. The tallest rider's eyes flicked to Caleb, then to the woman behind the bar. "Looks like we walked in on a reunion." The piano died this time, strings ringing hollow. Caleb stepped forward, slow, measured. His wife's hand tightened on his sleeve, but he set her gently aside. His eyes stayed on the riders. "This is my house now," he said. "If you've come for Rourke, you'll leave the rest." The outlaw laughed low. "Your house, is it? Funny thing about debt. It spreads. Whoever holds the floor when the bill's called, they pay." Guns twitched in holsters. The room breathed once, then stopped. The woman's chest burned with panic. She had prayed Jeb's sins wouldn't follow her here, but they had. They always did. And now Caleb with his wife and his newfound pride, stood at the center of it. If blood spilled, it would stain her boards forever. "Pour the drinks, darling," the outlaw said to her, flashing teeth like knives. "1 round, before we settle accounts." Her hands moved, but her heart split. She knew one wrong pour, one wrong glance, could spark the fuse. Jeb stared at her, silently pleading. Caleb stared too, but his eyes didn't plead. They warned. The room was tinder, and her hand held the match, as her fingers trembled as she poured. The amber liquid caught the lamplight, trembling in each glass like molten fire. One by one, she slid them across the counter toward the riders, her pulse louder than the clink of glass on wood. "Good girl," the tallest outlaw murmured, lifting his drink. His eyes didn't leave hers as he swallowed. "Still know how to serve." The word stung, too much like Jeb's from years ago, when she'd believed them sweet. Now they were a chain. Across the room, Caleb said quietly, "You don't have to serve men like this." His wife laid a hand on his arm, urging caution, but his gaze never wavered from her. The woman behind the bar felt heat crawl up her neck. A decade ago, she'd laughed at him for dreaming. Now he was telling her she could be more than the wreckage she'd chosen. One outlaw smirked and reached for her wrist. Caleb moved before thought caught up, his hand on the man's wrist, iron strong. The room froze, the air tight as a noose. The outlaw glared, but Caleb's calm stare held him still. "Take your hands off the lady," Caleb said. The outlaw yanked back slow, the tension hanging like a drawn bowstring. The saloon was a powder keg, but in that pause, something else flickered, something fragile. Her eyes met Caleb's. For the first time since he'd stepped back into her life, she saw not just the man she'd mocked, but the man who'd built himself out of her scorn. He had found love, steadiness, a saloon she once believed she deserved, and still he shielded her without spite. A memory came unbidden. Caleb, years ago, standing outside her window with a guitar he barely knew how to play, singing off key while she laughed and told him to quit dreaming. She had traded that clumsy devotion for Jeb's promises of grandeur, and where had it left her? Behind a bar, serving drinks to her own ghosts. She swallowed hard, blinking back the sting in her eyes. "You shouldn't have come back, Caleb," she whispered, though whether it was warning or confession, she couldn't tell. His wife glanced at her, then at him. Something softened in the bride's face, as if she understood without needing words. The outlaws drained their glasses, slamming them down sharp. "Enough of this dance," the leader said. "Debt's still owed. We take Rourke, or we take blood." The moment of fragile connection shattered beneath the weight of iron choices. Outside, thunder rumbled, not from the sky, but from more riders arriving. The storm broke in a roar of hooves. More riders circled the saloon, their shaders, stretching long in the lamplight that leaked through the windows. The outlaws inside grinned, their odds swelling. Jeb stumbled back against the bar, pale and sweating. "Don't let 'em take me, Caleb," he rasped, desperation cracking his voice. "You know what they'll do. You know..." Caleb didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted to the woman behind the counter, her shoulders squared now, jaw set. For years she had lived under Jeb's shadow, but tonight the truth lay bare. Jeb's debts, Jeb's lies, Jeb's ruin. The choice was no longer Caleb's alone. The leader spat his demand again. Rourke comes with us, alive or dead. The saloon held its breath. Then, softly, she spoke. Take him. Jeb's head whipped toward her, betrayal written in every line of his face. You'd sell me out? Her voice shook, but her chin held high. You sold yourself long ago. You dragged me down with you. I won't be chained to your debts anymore. The outlaws laughed cruel, pleased. They moved toward Jeb, but Caleb stepped between, hand raised. You take him, Caleb said, but you do it outside. This floor's not for blood. A long silence. Then the leader gave a sharp nod. His men grabbed Jeb, dragging him struggling through the doors, his curses echoing into the night until they faded into the thunder of hooves. The saloon exhaled, cards slapped back on tables, glasses filled, voices rising again like nothing had happened. But something had. The woman stood straighter, her chest unburdened for the first time in years. Caleb turned to her. For a moment, the old ache of their past hovered between them. She swallowed, then managed, I was wrong, Caleb. About everything. You built the life I said you never would. He studied her, not unkind, but not soft either. We all build something, he said. His gaze shifted to his wife, who watched in quiet understanding. Some of us just take longer to feed in the ground to build on. Her eyes burned, but she nodded. It was not forgiveness she received, nor did she expect it. It was something harder, cleaner, a truth she could live with. Caleb tipped his hat, guided his wife back to the floor. The piano struck up again, tentative at first, then stronger. And as he led his bride into another dance, the saloon seemed to glow with lamplight and laughter, washing away the shadows that had clung for too long. Years later, she would remember that night as the moment she was freed, not by love, not by fortune, but by the courage to let go of what had already burned. And the final image, Caleb spinning his wife beneath the glow of lanterns, while she wiped down the bar in silence, the bottle gleaming in her hand. Two lives forever divided, yet both standing steady beneath the same roof.